How does Notes become a great solution for a busy life? Stay tuned. Welcome to this week's edition, episode number 239 of NoteSchool TV, and we are happy to have you today. We're going to have a great guest on in just a minute, but before we bring him on, let me do a little housekeeping. Number one, make sure and hit that like button. Yeah, it only takes a second. Hit the like button, share this with your friends, all of your business associates, everybody that you know. Number two, go ahead and join and subscribe to the NoteSchool TV channel so that you'll be able to see 239 episodes if you so choose. And then number three, make sure and hit that bell notification. Bing, yep, go ahead and hit it so that you'll be notified when we go live every Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time. Also, if you'd like to know more about what we do at NoteSchool, just simply go to noteschool.com/TV. Again, noteschool.com/TV. And with that, let me bring on, our founder, our chief visionary officer, all-around good guy, Mr. Eddie Speed.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. So, Eddie, we always talk about this on the first part of the show and about how busy everybody is, but it just is reality these days, right?
I just was on a phone call with a very seasoned guy in the business, and I told him what all we were working on. I said, look, I feel like I'm as busy as I've been in 15 years.
Yeah.
And then I was going through all the things that are happening in the market and why that's kind of falling in our favor. And he says, I can see why you're busy. And by the way, that was my friend Scott Myers, by the way. That's great guy and a very savvy guy. And so anyway, love that dude. And I will say that I was also on another call this morning, Joe, and this guy was also a really seasoned guy in the business. And he says, Eddie, do you believe that you can make more money in notes right now than you can in real estate? And I said, absolutely. He said, I do too.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, these are the behind the scenes conversations. This isn't staged. This isn't a script. It's just the reality of where we are in the market. And the guy that you're going to meet has had some history with this and made a transition a long time ago, and sure is glad that he did. And we're going to talk about that.
We sure are. Eddie, I'm going to jump off, have plenty of time. You guys have fun. I'll see you at the end of the show.
See you, pal.
Yep.
One of the things that I say is that NoteSchool is a family, and people, that's probably overused. We're a community, we're a network, we're a group of go-givers, we're all of those things. But I think this next guy, you will see that, and he has been a go-giver to NoteSchool and our family at NoteSchool for a long time. And I really, really, really respect this guy. He's been very successful in a career, but he needed notes at the time that he did this because he traveled so much and he was so busy in his corporate life. He didn't have time to do traditional real estate, and he was unwilling to do it unless he could do things right. So he could do things right with notes on a very part-time basis. You guys welcome my friend, Mr. Joe LaCount.
Thank you, Eddie. My pleasure to be here. I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Now, you moved from the coal country.
I did. I moved from Minneapolis to Tampa.
That's the same climate.
Just it's kind of fun, as people will give me a call during the week, especially December, January. They're like, "What's the weather?" I said, "Do you really want me to tell you?" Yeah.
Well,
the older I got, the harder it just got to put my body into a cold car and drive around and things like that. So now I'm loving the weather, can get out a little bit more and enjoying life.
Well, here's what I want to kind of frame up what I want to talk about with you today, right? First of all, you've been with us a long time.
Yep.
You made a very strategic move to add note investing to your business. It turned out to be a good choice. And we want to talk about why that was a truth. You have had a very successful career, and I'll let you tell a little bit about that. Obviously, that's not the whole thesis of today, but it's interesting as to what you did in your day job and how much you had to travel.
Yeah.
You started out, I never will forget when you started with me, you said, Eddie, I'm behind where I need to be in my retirement. You were a little, you were frustrated.
I was, definitely.
And now all of a sudden you ended up early in your retirement ahead of where you thought you were going to be. I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Right. And why that happened to be a truth. So first of all, let's start out. You started out in some facet of real estate before you met us. Like what did that look like?
Yeah, so I actually started off in 1985 investing in traditional brick and mortar real estate. In fact, I still remember my first real estate transaction. It was about this time, 1985, and answered an ad in the paper, $100 down, and assumed a mortgage at 18.5% interest. And and it was an old GMAC loan, and all of a sudden, with $100, I was I was a real estate investor, and didn't really know what I was doing. And I would say, after that first experience, then I did a couple more, and then I started to get into duplexes and fourplexes, some apartment buildings, and things like that. The hard part that I found is that with my job, I moved around a lot. And so if you're kind of that traditional real estate where, you live where your real estate is, like for me, I was able to like personally manage that when I was, co-located. But when I had properties in, Minnesota, Indiana, California, Florida, I'm kind of thinking, what the heck am I doing?
So every time you'd move somewhere, you'd end up buying property, and then you get transferred, and you tried to keep that property. You're thinking, well, I managed it okay when I lived there.
Yeah. But it's such a huge dynamic. I mean, just finding like for me, I was the management company when I was co-located there. When I wasn't there, I couldn't just, run over and, fix a leaky faucet or just kind of drive by the property, make sure that things were being maintained. So it added just a level of complexity and a level of expense that I really didn't account for.
Two things that I want the audience to really get out of this, because this happens more often than people think. People think you join Note School, you're just inexperienced, you've never done anything, and that's why you went to a school. And more than half the people that show up at Note School have quite a resume. They're just trying to reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So you weren't unseasoned. In 1985, you started buying real estate, and you came along with us in what?
2013.
13. So you'd been doing it for 18 years by then, right? You weren't unseasoned.
No.
Then the second thing is apparently your car, this is before self-driving. Your car knew the way to the airport.
Absolutely. Yeah. You and I joke saying that I'm probably one of the only students that has bought a U.S. note somewhere other than the U.S. because, I was in France, I was in Amsterdam, I was in India, Vietnam, Brazil. I mean, you name it. And that was the beauty of it, is before, I would have to walk the property, where, when I started, investing in real estate notes, as long as I had the due diligence in front of me, I could do that on a plane. I mean, they have internet on the plane, even way back when, you had to pay a little bit, but it gave me the connectivity to, it didn't matter if I was 35,000, feet in the air or foreign country, I could, do my due diligence and even buy.
We were a laptop business.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And by the way, that laptop business was in 2013. I mean, yes, we've gotten insanely more efficient in 12 years, but even 12 years ago, it was a laptop business. And that's what things people didn't know about the note business. In fact, let me ask you a question. Before you came to Note School, what did you know or think about the note business?
I thought notes were for either the super rich that had I would say kind of a niche, or just banks. I did not really truly understand that notes were available to I would say the everyday investor, and so that was the stigma that I had to overcome.
And you didn't understand these recapitalization techniques.
Oh my God, no! I thought it's
You
just
thought
buy
you
and
just
hold.
the most common question people ask when they come down the road in Note School is, how much money do I need?
Yeah.
Right? Because they think they need $500,000 in cash in order to play.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, Joe, you know that we have people with several $1,000,000 in cash, and we have people that have way less than $500,000 in cash. But what they learn is they learn how to go use notes as a leverage and leverage them just like you can leverage property. Everybody knows how to leverage a property, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's most people with a driver's license get that.
Yeah.
But very few people know that you can do the same thing with notes until we teach them how to do it.
Yeah. I think it's probably honestly, one of the best kept secrets that I'm kind of like, because I honestly, after 2007, 2008, there's some issues with, with real estate, obviously. And so I was almost going through, mourning or withdrawal or depression, whatever you want to call it, until, I picked up your red book and your green book in notes, and then finally, came to my first class in 2013. And I'm like, this just totally opened up my eyes to an absolute, like, oh my God, where has this been? Why didn't I start in notes? I think if I would have started in notes, maybe I wouldn't have such an appreciation for notes and what it can do for me, because I did live on the other side. And so, when people, talk to me about, hey, traditional real estate investing versus notes, it's kind of like notes for me, hand down.
Well, you had a busy corporate job that was flying you around the world, and owning and trying to oversee property was, and particularly in various locations, but even if it would have been all in your hometown, you weren't there, or
Right.
you were too busy when you were there to deal with it, or you didn't want to fool with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, notes became the labor factor. And you hear it, you kind of know our modern day talk about how many properties you can manage versus how many notes you can manage. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I take a look at all of the, all of the time that I probably took away from my family, that I wish, honestly, I could get back, but I can't. So now I'm making up for it. But you take a look at the factor of finding good, finding a good property. Because for me, whether it's business or real estate, what really appealed to me was kind of that transformation, right? And so, how can you take, a building, a single family house, and take it from, people are kind of like, I want to live in that place, to, you're not going to over invest in it, but you make it a really nice, comfortable place for someone to live. That really appealed to me, because people ask me what my why is. That's one part of my why. And the other is part, obviously building a legacy, and not just a legacy of money. I'm teaching my kids how to do this as well, so that, if my wife and I decide to, take all the money and travel around the world and leave my kids, at least I leave them with how to be able to invest and earn money.
It's not the silver spoon that we want to leave them.
No.
It's the wisdom of what to do. That's the gift, right? It's cool to leave them something, but it's more important to leave them with a lesson they don't have to learn the way you had to learn it.
Yep. It's that self-sufficiency, Eddie. I think that really motivates me to, continue to, push myself, so that then I can, step back and, just teach others, maybe even what not to do, because I haven't done everything right since I joined Note School. But that, taking those things back and not being afraid, to make some of those small mistakes and then learn from them and then tell others, hey, this is what I did. Your outcome might be different, but just let me tell you, my story. And just everybody in the whole Note School community is very willing to share their, both their successes and their, watch out for this.
Well, and Joe, let's be honest, we weren't as mature as a training company 12 years ago as we are today, right?
Yeah.
We built a lot of efficiencies, and you help us, even you're such a go-giver, and you even help us look at those things, say, what could we be better? It wasn't near as easy to do it in 2013 as we've kind of helped make it today, right? Yeah. But I do want to talk about this. In spite of the fact that it's not as efficient back then as it is now, I want to go back to something I think is really important, because I think the audience caught on to this. You were frustrated.
Yeah.
You felt like you were behind. Now, fast forward 12 years, you feel like you're ahead of where you thought you needed to be. How did you go from behind to ahead?
Well, it was really taking a look at, because I was chasing properties, and, you take a look at the next best thing is you got to flip this, or, oh no, apartments is the thing to do. And then all of a sudden this and that, and I don't know, I was starting to get dizzy with, all of the different things that people were proposing. And then when I got to Notes, it just seemed like, okay, one of the things that I love about Notes is, okay, I have my investment strategy, and I take a look and say, how does Notes match what I want to do? So for me, because I felt like I was behind, in my, and I'll just call it wealth building, my IRA, HSA, I could go off, and talk about HSAs for forever, but, those wealth building accounts, and I would tell, my friends, family, people, hey, this is what I'm doing. And they're like, that's illegal. You can't do that, Joe. And it's like, no, you can put a certain amount in there, you can only put so much into your HSA or your IRA, but you can make as much as you want and keep it. And think about, I was doing all of this, and I was getting the depreciation and things like that, but honestly, it was not building my wealth account.
Yeah.
And that was so important to me, is how do I make sure, that, I don't outlive my money, and I think that might be on a lot of, people's minds that listen to this, is how do we make sure that we don't outlive, what we worked our whole entire life for? Right. And I feel like this is something, Landlord, honestly, it wore me out. This is something that I can do, until they throw dirt on me.
Well, I think that, it goes back to how much energy it takes, right? I have this saying, and you've heard me say it: you can have 55 rentals or 2,000 notes for the same level of work.
Yeah.
Right. And people say, well, look, I just made that up. Like, there's no statistical research that says that. But I have been around this a long time. I've been around a few thousand people that have done it, and they all repeat what you said to me. Like, you could not have continued in real estate with the busy factor that you had in your day job. It was not working.
Right. Well, and Eddie, this really afforded me, because honestly, I sometimes I felt a little bit schizophrenic, because when I was with my real estate buddies, it was kind of like, Joe, you just need to quit your job, just go 100% into real estate. And it's kind of like, I would love to do that, but there's also such a thing as my boss, who's in the next room, that I got to make sure that I can provide for my family. And so this gave me that option to do both, and because I love both, and I think they complement each other.
Let me say this and see if this sounds right. There's real estate investing, and there's a note strategy.
Yeah.
One of them is a business. One of them is a strategy.
Yeah. Yep.
You're not, if you own stock, you have a stock investing strategy, not a stock investing business.
Right.
If you have
Exactly.
real estate, you have a real estate investing business, full-time or part-time.
Yep.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And so I think that is what people defined to me that became clear, like there's a difference. And so I'm very thrilled for you. I'm very thrilled for you and your wife and all your family. I know you've moved to Florida, and that's really cool. And I get to see you more than I did because you're not flying around the world so much, right?
Right. Yep.
And so I want to talk now about what we see happening in the market, because obviously nothing is exactly the same. So you started in 2013, and there was a lot of non-performing notes, and there was this, there was that. And then we went through a cycle where interest rates were 2%, and it was hard to get a lot of yield in notes, right?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden we see where most everybody's kind of figuring out, hey, I'm not really making money with my rentals. I can be way more profitable with the owner financing, either buying somebody else's note or creating a note on the property I used to rent. And so you kind of see this, and I want to get kind of your perspective of what are people discovering about the market, and what is it kind of even as a new discovery for you versus you're like, yeah, I'm welcome to the water. It's just the temperature is fine.
Yeah. For me, it was always taking a look and saying at the end of the month, how much was I truly making? And when I started doing the numbers lately on taking a look at, how much someone was bringing in for a rental, because there's always like, oh, I'm pulling in this much. And it's like, okay, that was that month. Over a 2-year period, when all of a sudden that roof goes out or that furnace or that AC, are you factoring that in? Because a lot of, real estate investors were kind of living almost like paycheck to paycheck just by the skin of their teeth. And the expenses they don't factor in are some of those big lump sum. And so now as I'm talking to, landlords and investors and things like that, I said, really start to take a look and, what are you truly making on this? And how much is your time worth? Because we're probably going through a generational, I would say, transformation and wealth transfer like we've never seen before. There's a lot of landlords out there that are really taking a look and saying, I want to pass my rental portfolio on to, my son, my daughter, my kids, my grandkids, whatever. And the kids are kind of like, I don't want to work as hard as you did. Give me the money. And, doing that in notes, you can do that. Doing in that rentals, people are kind of like, I don't want the headache.
I had a phone call yesterday with a guy he has a fractional CFO business, meaning they're a CFO for your company, chief financial officer, right? But they do it on just a limited, in other words, 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week or 2 hours a week, right?
Yep.
They do it on a fractional basis, and his clientele is 100% real estate investors. So he kind of does this for some of these big real estate masterminds I'm in. So he has a list of, I don't know, call it 150 clients, but they're all kind of hot shot real estate investors, right? Not the little bitty guys, but the guys that have more volume and bigger portfolios. And I'm talking to him, and he's saying, we're talking about them doing this transformation, taking their rental properties and creating seller financing. And he just said, he said, I got on a deal a year ago, kind of telling him, I'm really worried. You think you're making money with this, but you're not.
Yeah.
And he was going back and showing him the math, like what you're saying, like you have some expense that you had, 14 months ago, you kind of forget about it. Right. But if you amortize that over the last 14 months, you're netting no more than about half of the rent you're getting, and that's before paying the bank. This is income before you pay the bank.
Yep.
And so, we've developed some models, and we're working with him and trying to figure that out. But, I think this is where people are at now, Joe. And I think the value in people hearing what you did was this. Not only did you reposition your retirement, you're a poster child for how to reposition your retirement. But more importantly, you did it with having to give up. Let's just say that, I know you loved what you did. You didn't love it like you were in the Peace Corps or something like that, right? But you loved what you did, and you felt like you were helping people. You didn't have to give up your job to go do this.
Exactly. And that to me was, I think, really important, because I think the two, my business and real estate really complemented each other. And I never want to give up a piece of me to just say, oh, I'm going to just do that. So to me, it's about transformation, and there's so many aspects of that.
I love what you're saying about legacy and the fact that you are showing your kids now what you learned, because I think that's really critical, that, this investing strategy is not something they're going to read about in the Wall Street Journal, this note buying strategy, right?
Yep.
And so I appreciate the fact that you're now trying to spread that out. And that I've certainly done that with my family, that you've watched kind of grow up over the years. Now they're all young adults.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's really cool. I guess the last thing I would say is, okay, it's been quite a ride, right? You're now in a position that you're busy. So it's not like you're retired and you're just bored and you go buy ugly shorts and you just go play off like, it's not that. You're still doing things because it's just kind of who you are. But you don't have the corporate job. You've been able to get off of it even earlier than you projected.
Yep.
And that's cool. You've got a legacy. You're showing your kids how to do it. Now just pretend that you have 100 people sitting in front of you. They're in this audience. They're sitting in front of you. These physically can't see them.
Yep.
There's 1,000 people that see this, right? But the point is what advice would you give them?
What I did is I really took a look and said, okay, where do I want my investing strategy to be? And what do I want to accomplish? So first, wealth building was a big thing for me. And now with notes, I can switch from wealth building to income generation on a monthly basis. How many notes do I need to, get, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, a month in passive cash flow. So, for me, it's almost like, reinventing myself each and every time and taking a look, because as I learn this, as I work with my family, friends, others, I'm so willing to share what I've learned, some of the things to do, not to do, that, this is so transportable. And like I said, I'm investing in notes all over the United States, and I've never even seen the property, which, I mean, if in traditional real estate, people would say you're batty, you can't do that. With notes, this gives me the time freedom to, maybe not recover some of the years, but be able to do some of the things that maybe I haven't been able to do before. And that to me is, I think, really, really important, is, this can be done anywhere. It can be done by anybody. You don't need, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you do need some knowledge, and take a look at how notes fit with your investment strategy.
You're making more money with a pencil than you are with a hammer.
Absolutely. And my, I have some of my time freedom back to do some of the things, that, I want to do, so there are causes and time that I invest in, in other things that I just, if I had the traditional real estate, I just wouldn't have been able to do that. And
That's
so
awesome.
I thank you for that.
Now I look at it like this. I think we're just vessels. I was introduced to this when I was 20 years old. You were introduced to this, 12 years ago, and we're just vessels, right?
Yeah.
We're neither one of us invented the business. We may have perfected some techniques, but we didn't invent the business. We've tried to make it better, and we've tried to understand how it's good for us. But if I wake up every day and think, I just have been doing this a little longer than other people, and I've kind of I've already run some experiments, so you don't need to run the experiment. Let me just give you the result of the experiments I've already tried. That's the compression of time thing that we talk about as far as learning. Yeah. And then the compression of time on the other end is it just takes a lot less time to be the bank than it does a landlord. That's just the truth.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other beauty, that I love, Eddie, is the sharing of cycles, real estate cycles, note cycles. Every time a different cycle comes on, there's a little bit of a nuance, but you kind of take a look and say, that looks a little bit familiar. How can I adopt and adapt to a cycle that I already lived through?
When I wake up in the morning, I feel like that's my number one initiative, is to be the visionary of what the next opportunity is. And that way I feel like I'm leveraging all these 45 years.
Yeah.
Right. I'm leveraging something that I can help people see, because, I'm on the top of the mountain with the binoculars. Right. And hopefully we'll continue to do that. Mr. Joe Varnador, I'm going to let you come on and close us out.
Sounds good. Joe, you're an inspiration. We appreciate you, and we appreciate what you're doing with us now as well. And you're exactly right. I talked to a bunch of landlords the other night, and I said, "Hey, how many of you think your kids want your rentals?" And I don't know, there was 2 out of that said, "Oh yeah, they want them."
Oh yeah,
sure they do.
They'll call the realtor when they leave the cemetery.
If not before.
Ask him the question: would you really rather have the rentals, or would you really rather have the money? See how many hands go
yeah,
up.
we know what they're going to say every time. Joe, thanks so much. Eddie, thank you so much. So as we wrap up today, just want to share with you guys a couple of things. So whether you have rentals and you want to know how to convert those rentals into notes, or if you don't have rentals, but you just want to buy notes, check in with us, guys. Go to noteschool.com/TV. noteschool.com/TV, and we would love to have you have a conversation with you and show you how well you can get in the note business as well. With that, we will see you next week, same place, same time, 11:05 Central Time on Wednesday. Have a good week.